Today we're going to be going over 10 of the most expensive ball python combinations that are commercially available for sale, so to speak. This is in essence a part 2 of our most expensive ball pythons that you need a loan to get. Only this one you're going to need to mortgage your home now because combinations reach a whole different level. We're going to be using Morphmarket because to me it's the best gauge of what's available to the public. We're going to be skipping over any repeats, anything that I think also might be inflated in cost, and it's very obvious they should not be that amount. We'll also be avoiding snakes that are expensive because of their own individual fame, such as Skittles, which are not so much their genetics, but their uniqueness in and of themselves that is driving the cost so high. For our first pick, which would be relatively the cheapest of all of these combinations, but probably the most well-known, would be the Pompeii. Obviously, I'm breaking the rules here as it just sold, but this animal was born October 2023, so it wasn't sold all that terribly long ago for sure, but there's a very good reason why I'm doing that. There are none available right now, but they do come available. As you can see here, the going cost of a Pompeii is typically going to be around $6,000. Yes, I'm starting with that, and the Pompeii is going to be the cheapest thing that I show you today. Pompeis are beautiful and they're going to maintain a high cost for a long time because it is a difficult combination to hit. It is 1 recessive and 4 co-dominants. And if you want to innovate on that by adding things like the special Pompeii that we saw at one of our Tinley shows, that becomes even more difficult to do because you're asking to hit the odds on yet another gene. So they are going to obviously always maintain a great value, and there's no wonder why. They have such insane stark contrast, obviously living up to the name of the famous disaster of Mount Vesuvius erupting and destroying the entire city of Pompeii. It looks like fire and magma and molten rock. Pompeii is one of those genes that just really become a brand at this point, similar to the Kraken and other such morphs like it. But regardless, I wanted to start there even though there are none that I can see available on Morphmarket because I wanted to show it off as a proper benchmark that's where we're starting. Next up would be the Holy Grail, coming in at a cool $8,000. The Holy Grail might sound like it is one individual snake's name, but it is not. A Grail ball python is a clown lavender, so a Holy Grail adds pied on top of that. This is a triple recessive clown lavender pied. Anything with coloring like this, and when you get these cool contrasts, you're gonna have a bit of a smoke show on your hands, so to speak. The patterning and lettering, the idea that you're gonna have these perfect whites coming in, even on the pattern itself looks like the letter T and maybe an A there as well. It's striking and intense to say the least. And obviously when you combine 3 of the most famous popular morphs successfully and it doesn't end up creating a muddied mess like sometimes it can, you're gonna have a winner on your hands, and that's exactly what we have here. It's a really cool name on top of that. I love the idea behind these naming of morphs and such like that. Obviously the Grail being the clown pied. They could have done something dreamsicle-ish as well since that was technically the original name, but Grail is the kind of newer one. Going for Holy Grail, I think this is a perfect name. It suits it very well. Next up, staying on the topic of lavender, would be this Lavender Puzzle. Puzzle is a crazy recessive morph that to me brings the pattern more to the top of the snake. Honestly, I don't think this is talked about enough because looking at a snake from top down is the natural way that most people will look at them, even people who don't like snakes that are just observing them. So having that pattern on the top, I think just naturally suits them a little bit better. But regardless, having the lavender in here also adds that extra flavor of yellow, adding color to what Puzzle normally brings. Now, I think this is a pretty bright animal, and that I think is because Puzzle actually starts to lighten it up a little bit. And I just can't get over the pattern just being the way it is. Our own Puzzle here is a sterling Puzzle, and you can see the same thing on her, this pattern along the back. So it doesn't surprise me when you layer an extra recessive on top of Puzzle, especially if this is something among the world's first, that you have a hefty price tag on them here coming in at $10,000. Our next combination coming in at $10,000 would be this Fire Yellowbelly Spotnose Redhead Hypo clown. Double recessive, 4 extra genes. I believe this is actually an animal that we saw at one of the Tinleys, but this does everything that Pompeii kind of does. Obviously, it's not a Pompeii. It is missing 1 gene. That would be the black pastel, but you swap out the fire in there and then you get a still awesome snake, but in a different way. Fire and Hypo here, I think, tag team this already awesome combo to create a ghost of Pompeii. Obviously, way more bright because it doesn't have the black pastel coming in there to darken it. It is more orangey orangey than it is that deeper, darker magma color. But then again, that is now also being faded because of the hypo. I think one thing that people miss when it comes to hypo is just what it does. Sometimes I hear people say, well, it just makes it look as dull as shed. It makes it look like it's dull. I disagree. Honestly, it makes it glow. It makes it have that almost brighter than life feel to it. It takes it right to the edge of where you would normally have a washed out snake. Instead, you have an explosion of bright colors, almost as if a light was turned on from the inside of the snake. And it really shows you off that sort of contrast in here. It's almost like a 3D type contrast, like a third version of it, not just color, not just pattern type contrast. Now you have a brightening contrast because you do have these darks still on the snake, especially near the tail there. Next up, and also coming in at $10,000 or maybe a little more even in some cases, would be monsoons. Now we talked about monsoons in our last one and they were number one. They are not number one now, but they're so expensive they landed on a list again. This happens to be a special monsoon, and I see special monsoons quite a bit, or a lot of genes that might brighten monsoon up. I think that this typically serves it very well because I wouldn't say monsoon's a dark gene, but with so much going on, it helps to have that contrast there so that you can really appreciate every little crazy dot and splatter that this animal shows you. It is by far the most wild, out of control morph, in my opinion, that is out there. And if you're just talking about how the pattern is just made crazy, there's not really much else that comes close to it. I voiced my concerns in terms of what do you do with the pattern from here, but I have thought of some ideas. Putting clown into this, I don't know what it would do to the side patterns, but it would still get the head stamp. So I think clown would be a great way to move forward with monsoon. And I know people are going to hit that probably soon. I would not be surprised at all if you get that this year. One other one that I've had thoughts about would be to add pied. It's gonna go one of two ways though. You're either going to have a awesome snake with all these crazy blotches on it with even more insanity. Imagine this just with white coming up and through it. But my theory is, unfortunately, that you're gonna get an all white snake. I hope I'm wrong, but I just feel like that's what would happen. I also want to show off this phantom monsoon here, which is beautiful in a different way. Another type of gene that kind of enhances and such like that, but also does a lot more. Phantom is genetically the exact same as Mystic, but Mystic is similar to Mojave in a way as well, but still acts differently. You see a lot of Mystic Monsoon, Phantom Monsoon, and Mojave Monsoons because I think it suits it very well. It adds a lot of character to it, and I think it adds a lot of contrast. You almost get these glowing sides, and the darks intensify a bit. I would say that they shade out a little bit more, but where they are present, they are more intense, not in terms of just being more pure dark, but if you look at the head itself, it is a almost grayish, tannish type head. It's a little bit more lightened. I think it suits it very well, but monsoon itself is going to command a very large price, and I don't think that that's going to change for a little while, honestly. It's a very protected gene. It's expensive to get into, and as much as people talk about it, I'm not seeing a whole ton of people try to work it, at least on the smaller to medium breeder level yet. Could be wrong, could just be my area, and maybe we'll see an explosion soon, but for now, they remain a very expensive morph. Moving on, at $12,000, we have this Enchi Yellowbelly Lace Clown Hide. Lace has been fairly popular for a while as an enhancing gene, but I think lately it has exploded in terms of popularity when Canova showed what they can do with Lace and Clown. What we have here already is a decently expensive base in the Clown Pied still. When you layer on Enchi Yellowbelly, you have an absolutely gorgeous animal, which has a lot of beautiful different colors here. So obviously Clown does what it does with the head stamp. Pied comes in, gives you that crazy contrast, but you've got these crazy oranges morphing into yellows near the top and a much more dark pattern on these lines that just happen to go down the animal, which actually fade out the further up the snake that you go towards the head. Honestly, it looks like a bunch of lines. You've got a yellow line, a dark line, a yellow line, a dark line, at least down here in the middle part of the snake. And again, as always, Pied happens to come in with that beautiful stark white to contrast it in these little islands of beauty that spout all over randomly on the animal. Moving along to our next pick would be this Super GHI Red Stripe Yellowbelly Spotnose Clown. Again, kind of flirting with Pompeii, just missing the black pastel here. I love this kind of what I guess I would call a yellow, but it looks like those like glow stickers. If you're from the 80s or 90s, you know what I'm talking about. Next to the classic GHI look of a dark animal that just has crazy dark borders on everything it touches, but then is faded. Almost like you took an eraser and attempted to erase something that was just too dark and you couldn't get rid of it. It is a crazy intense and beautiful animal. It really shows you how good GHI goes with this combo. I think it's gonna be killer when somebody hits the GHI Pompeii. I don't think it's been done. If it has been, let me know in the comments. I want to see it because I'm gonna be trying to create one myself. And then this really just gives you the hints of the kind of craziness that it's gonna bring. It's beautiful and it can be yours for the low cost of $12,000. Our next set will be what I alluded to at the beginning of the video, and it's gonna be groups. Starting off with zebra combinations. And some of these zebras are gonna run you anywhere from $12,000 all the way up to close to $15,000. Zebra is a morph that we talked about in our video on the most expensive morphs. And I think it came in number 2 just below Monsoon, but here it goes above it. And it kind of alludes what I'm saying about Monsoon is that it might be a little harder to work in certain combos. Zebra certainly isn't. Zebra creates this zipper-like pattern or these zebra stripes all along the back of the snake. Again, what I said earlier with the puzzle is that it brings pattern to the top of the snake, really. It shines when you're looking down on the animal now. And I think that suits it very well. I think it makes it a great animal for observation as well. It makes it more beautiful in terms of its own presentation because it's easier to film the snake from top to down. Just take a look at some of the pictures on Morphmarket. People will still do top-down pictures, but they're usually not leading off with top-down pictures, but it is here. Top-down is the leading picture in I think every single thing I'm going to show you. Here we've got the Zebra Russo pastel, and Russo brings a lot of lightning into the animal. It really serves to enhance, especially when it's being paired with other genes. It almost dances with being hypo in a way, so especially along the back you can definitely tell that this is a Russo. What I really like about Zebra, if you look at the pattern here along this one, you almost have a chimera type look just in certain spots. So obviously you get these stripes going along the back of it, but they don't always match, but it's almost as if it's like off center, and it's just so cool and unique to me. And it doesn't happen on every single part of the snake, but you can clearly see it happening here along the upper middle back of this animal. Looking at a Zebra ODYB, Orange Dream and Yellowbelly, again putting those two together, the only thing that would be better would be throwing Enchi on top of this as well. Orange Dream and Yellowbelly pair together insanely well. Just really adds an extra oomph to the Orange Dream coloring. When we add that Zebra to it, it creates more of a wave type pattern along this snake to further highlight these awesome colors and create this melting type look along its back. Finishing up with Zebra, we actually have this double recessive, a Zebra Hypo pastel. I mentioned how the Russo kind of looked like it was dancing with Hypo. Well, this one has hit Hypo. Now you've got that beautiful glow that I mentioned before, along with the awesome pattern that only Zebra can bring. You start to really see the future of what this can do, and honestly, looking at this now, my own wheels start to turn. If you are looking to invest in a morph that's still very expensive, by the way, even just by itself, even just the head, wake up and at least think about Zebra, because this is one that presents very well. It has more than proven itself at this point. It is an amazing gene with a very bright future and a lot that you can do with this, and what I've already seen has blown me away. Second to last would be Desert Ghost combinations. And the Desert Ghost combos that we're going to look at today are going to run anywhere from $12,000 up to $18,000. Now, Desert Ghost has been worked so passionately these last 3-4 years that you can now get visual basic combos, even with maybe a het in there, for very affordably cheap. But there's still a lot you can do, especially in these more advanced combinations. Here we are looking at a Super Orange Dream Leopard Desert Ghost Pied, 2 recessives, 1 super form of the OD, and Leopard. What more can you say? Leopard is one of my most favorite genes. It does so much and it does it very well. It lives up to its name of Leopard. Super Orange Dream, again, brings in these beautiful oranges and these yellows that are very beautiful. And then the Desert Ghost just does its little magic and cleans the whole thing up and creates these absolutely beautiful jet black patterns. You have contrast being compounded here because you have the stark whites. Then it contrasts with the very clean, crisp, yellowy oranges, and then the jet blacks. And there's no bleeding of the black into the pattern. Another gene that pairs with Desert Ghost quite well is Hypo and Clown. Here we have the triple recessive, insanely powerful Hypo Desert Ghost Clown. A lot of people say that they do similar things, that they serve to brighten the snake up a bit, but I think people aren't looking at the big picture here. Desert Ghost cleans the animal up. Yes, it does some servicing to brightening, but I think that's just because it intensifies what you're seeing. It does not necessarily brighten, it just is probably the best enhancer type gene. Hypo, I feel like that one is the one that brightens the snake to the point where it's nearly exploding. So when paired together, what you have is a clean animal. It is like a ray of sunshine. Pair that all together with Clown and you have an animal that literally looks like a ray of light. Moving to another triple recessive would be this Spotnose Desert Ghost Genetic Stripe Clown. The Genetic Stripe Clown is known as the Kiki Project. When you layer the Desert Ghost on top of that, this is just beyond words how cool this is. Very clean, very bright animal with these spider web type patterns. Almost kind of reminds me of the spider in a way, but clean and far more efficient, like little rib cages moving down the entire animal. This one just has a perfect spot on its head too, which is very unique. This is just an absolutely intense animal. You can see why these Desert Ghost combos, especially with Clown, with Hypo, they are going to be around for a while and they're going to get even more crazy. And to wrap Desert Ghost up, we have this Yellowbelly Desert Ghost Pied that happens to also be triple het Cryptic Clown G-Stripe. Now why that's significant is because Cryptic and Clown are allelic and it makes a krypton. It basically acts as its own recessive in a way. It will always pass one of these two genes on. So in a way, it is kind of acting like a triple recessive because you have Desert Ghost, Pied, and then a krypton. You layer Yellowbelly on top of that and you've just got a recipe for beauty and a absolutely intense animal that has so much you could do with it. This animal right here would be the MVP of your team. Coming in at $18,000, it better be. As I am doing this, there's one that I actually missed. So actually at number 2 would be this Black Pastel Butter Fire Hydra Spotnose Clown. Now I know next to nothing about the Hydra. I looked it up. There's a spattering of maybe 6 or 7 individuals on there of anywhere from a single gene Hydra being around $1,000 to these combinations going all the way up to here. So I can't speak to the genetic worth of the gene, but it is a listed gene on Morphmarket, and this animal here is an intense animal. The animal itself is $25,000, which will tie our most expensive snake. The only reason I put it at number 2 is because this is the only one I can find with Hydra. This animal here, along with the classic Spotnose Clown head, is working very well with the butter and the fire. The Black Pastel brings in these awesome colors. Now Hydra is described as a slightly lighter coloring, but most of it is known to be a pattern morph. It looks to take the alien heads and just create these chaotic, inconsistent little morphs. There's no consistency here, so it's a little chaotic, but it's still clean. Very unique look to that. Kind of like Puzzle, but still its own unique thing. You can still tell that this thing is attempting to create alien heads throughout it. They almost look like mutated alien heads. In fact, near the tail of it, I kind of see a few of the normal alien head looks. But a very awesome looking, beautiful animal, just worth $25,000. And finally, what is averaging the most expensive combinations on Morphmarket right now, and it might upset certain people, will be Sunset. Starting off with this Hypo Sunset, which also happens to be double het Desert Ghost and Clown. This is a powerhouse because Hypo and Sunset pair together incredibly well because Hypo prevents the brownout. You get Desert Ghost on top of that. We did see the Desert Ghost Sunset, and a lot of people who had created it, they were a little underwhelmed, but I think that in time, the aging of that animal will prove otherwise because they won't change as much as the normal Sunset would. And if the only knock on them is that they brown out as they age, and if you eliminate that, well then you have one of the coolest colored looking animals out there. And then you see Clown in there quite a bit, and I'll get to that in a second. But we also want to look at Pied. I've seen these types of snakes in person, and I think that Pied really helps it out. Pied serves to kind of light the snake up and kind of prevents this brownout on it. And again, just these perfect striping contrasts on it. Almost ironic how you have this just nearly perfect block of coloring on it. And to cap it all off would be the sunset clown here for a cool $25,000. What I really like about what this is doing is it's actually bringing these whites creeping in from the belly. You wouldn't think that this would brighten the animal, but it has. And it has eliminated the head stamp, and instead you have a orangey, rusty animal with these flames shooting up from the sides and these subtle whites just kicking up. Very cool and very intense. But I promised I would talk about hide and clown because they were in, I think, almost every single combination that I showed you today. And the reason I didn't mention them in and of themselves is because I would only mention them. Clown and pied are the king. They are immediately what you think of when a new morph comes out or something else you want to get into it. It is the first things you say, I gotta get that into it. They are the staple diet of the ball python community. So that's why I didn't mention them, because they would have been mentioned in every single thing. And it's no surprise here, obviously, with this sunset clown taking the cake at number one for the most expensive combination on Morphmarket, being only a double recessive as of the time of making this video. If you wanted to see part one of this video where we just talk about the most expensive morphs, you can check that out right here.